Gideon Voss, the project lead, stood with an unwavering gaze fixed on the central console. His fingers danced over the controls with the confidence of a maestro conducting a symphony. "Prepare for activation," he announced, his voice steady, betraying no sign of the turmoil that churned within him. This was the culmination of his life's work, the moment that would redefine humanity's place in the universe. Beside him, Ava Pierce, the team's physicist, monitored the energy levels. Her brow furrowed as an anomaly flashed on her screen. "Gideon, the temporal flux is off the charts. We need to abort," she said, her voice laced with urgency. Gideon turned to her, his expression unchanging. "Ava, we've accounted for every variable. This is within the expected parameters. We proceed." Ava bit her lip, her eyes darting between Gideon and the screen. She knew the risks, but Gideon's confidence was infectious, his resolve unshakable. She reluctantly turned back to her station, whispering a silent prayer to the void. Remy Novak, the engineer responsible for the machine's construction, clapped his hands together, breaking the tense silence. "Well, folks, it's now or never. Let's make history or become it," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Thane Krios, head of security, stood by the door, arms crossed, a silent sentinel. His only contribution to the conversation was a brief nod, acknowledging the gravity of the moment. Zara Finch, the team's biologist, stood next to Dex Arlo, the communications officer, both exchanging anxious glances. "Just think of the papers we'll write after this," Zara said, attempting to sound optimistic. Dex managed a weak smile. "Assuming we're not rewritten out of history ourselves," he quipped, his humor masking his nerves. Soren Vega, the youngest member of the team and a recent intern, could hardly contain his excitement. "Can you imagine? We're about to break the one barrier everyone thought was unbreakable." The machine hummed to life, its sound growing from a whisper to a roar. Reality seemed to warp around them as the air filled with electric anticipation. Gideon's hand hovered over the final switch. "Initiating sequence in 3, 2, 1. He flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a brilliant light filled the room, blinding and intense. When it faded, standing before them was a shadowy figure, its form blurred as if it were not entirely present in their time or any time. Ava's voice was the first to break the stunned silence. "What have we done?" Gideon stepped forward, a mix of fear and fascination in his eyes. "We've opened the door," he said, unaware of the true nature of what they had unleashed. The Time Eater, a creature born from the chaos of ruptured time, observed them, its gaze piercing through to their very souls. It was the beginning of an experiment gone awry, a prelude to horror that none of them could have imagined. As the creature vanished as quickly as it appeared, the team was left to grapple with the reality of their situation. They had sought to conquer time, but instead, they had invited something far more ancient and terrifying into their world. Gideon's voice, once filled with confidence, now carried a hint of doubt. "Secure the facility. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Thane immediately sprang into action, barking orders to secure the perimeter. The rest of the team huddled around their stations, trying to make sense of the data, but one thing was clear. They had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. In the days following the threshold experiment, the Celestial Corporation facility became a crucible of unexplained phenomena. The air was charged with a palpable sense of dread, as if the very fabric of reality within its walls had been frayed. Gideon Voss, ever the stoic leader, convened a meeting in the main lab, the site of their unprecedented experiment. The team gathered around the central table, where holographic displays flickered with incomprehensible data. Ava Pierce, her eyes shadowed by sleepless nights, presented her findings first. "The temporal distortions are increasing in frequency and intensity," she explained, pointing to a graph that showed erratic spikes. "It's as if time itself is rebelling against our intrusion." Remy Novak, leaning against a console, rubbed his temples. "I checked the machine. It's offline, but these anomalies, they're acting like aftershocks." His usually jovial demeanor had dimmed, replaced by concern. Thane Krios, arms folded, his gaze fixed on the data, spoke up. "We're not just dealing with equipment malfunctions. I've seen things. Figures, shadows moving in the corners of my vision." His admission, delivered in a matter-of-fact tone, sent a chill through the room. Zara Finch chimed in, trying to inject a note of rationality. "It could be stress, fatigue. We've all been working around the clock." Her attempt to rationalize the situation fell flat, even to her own ears. Dex Arlo, who had been quietly observing the exchanges, finally spoke. "And what about the reports from the lower levels? Equipment aging decades overnight, digital records scrambled as if they've been through a time warp?" Soren Vega, the youngest among them, looked from face to face, a mix of fear and fascination in his eyes. "Is it possible? Did we actually bring something back with us? Something from beyond?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. The team fell into uneasy silence, each lost in their own thoughts. It was Gideon who broke the silence, his voice cutting through the tension. "Speculation isn't going to help us. We need to focus on understanding and containing these anomalies." Just then the room's lights flickered, a momentary glitch that felt ominously like a sign. As the lights stabilized, Ava noticed something alarming on her display. "Guys, you need to see this." She enlarged a section of the data stream. "This pattern, it's not random, it's almost like it's alive." Remy pushed off from the console, peering over Ava's shoulder. "Alive? That's impossible. What we're dealing with is purely physical, right?" But even as he said it, doubt crept into his voice. The team exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the uncharted territory they had ventured into. The rest of the day was spent in a flurry of activity, trying to correlate the anomalies with their experiment's parameters. But with each passing hour, the facility seemed to slip further from their grasp, its behavior more erratic, more unfathomable. Late into the night, as the team pored over data and theories, a sudden piercing alarm cut through the lab. The security system, triggered without warning, bathed the room in a flashing red light. Thane was the first to react, sprinting to the security console. "It's the containment chamber," he announced, reading the alert. "Something's breached the perimeter." Without a word, the team rallied to his side, ready to face whatever new horror awaited them. But as they prepared to confront the unknown, each understood that they were no longer the masters of their own creation. They had opened a door they could not close, inviting into their world an entity that defied comprehension. The corridors of the Celestial Corporation facility felt colder than usual as the team made their way to the containment chamber. The red warning lights painted their hurried steps in a sinister hue, each flash a heartbeat in the growing panic. They arrived at the chamber, a reinforced room designed to hold the unpredictable results of their experiments, now a scene of inexplicable chaos. The door stood ajar, an impossible occurrence given its biometric security protocols. Gideon was the first to enter, his posture rigid, ready for confrontation. The sight that met their eyes defied logic. Equipment aged by decades, metal corroded and screens flickering with static, showing glimpses of past and future events in rapid, disjointed succession. Ava's voice broke the heavy silence. This isn't just temporal distortion. It's as if time itself is being consumed." Zara Finch, her scientific curiosity battling with the fear gnawing at her insides, stepped forward to examine the corroded instruments. "Look at this," she murmured, gently touching the surface of what was once a state-of-the-art computer, now rusted beyond use. "It's like it aged 100 years in a matter of seconds." Dex Arlo, unable to hide his apprehension, joked weakly. "Anyone else wish they had invested in anti-aging cream right about now?" His attempt at humor fell flat, the gravity of their situation too pressing for levity. Soren Vega, the intern whose dream of working on groundbreaking science had turned into a nightmare, whispered, "What kind of creature can do this?" Thane Krios, always the protector, surveyed the room with a tactical eye. Whatever it is, it's not here now. We need to track it, understand its patterns. Remy Novak, usually the team's source of optimism, looked around, his expression grim. Patterns? In this chaos? He shook his head, disbelief etched in every line of his face. It was then that Ava, her gaze fixed on a screen still flickering with coherence, froze. Guys, you need to see this. The team crowded around her, watching as the screen displayed a series of images. The creature, the Time Eater, moving through the facility, its form blurry but unmistakably feeding on the temporal energy around it. Gideon, ever the leader, took a deep breath. This is our fault. We brought this entity here, and it's our responsibility to stop it. His voice, firm and resolved, left no room for debate. Zara, her mind racing with implications, added, "If it feeds on time, then it's not just our equipment at risk. It's us, our lives, our histories." The realization hit them like a physical blow. They were not just battling an unknown entity. They were fighting for their very existence. Soren, the fear evident in his voice, stammered, "But how do we fight something that eats time?" Gideon turned to the team, his eyes burning with a mix of fear and determination. "We find a way. We have the brightest minds in the world right here. We created this problem. It's up to us to solve it." The team, though daunted by the task ahead, rallied to Gideon's call. They dispersed to their respective stations, each determined to contribute to the battle against an enemy that defied all laws of nature and science. As they worked, the banter that had once defined their interactions was replaced by a focused, urgent dialogue, a testament to the severity of their situation. They were no longer colleagues working on an experiment. They were comrades in arms, fighting against an unseen force that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their reality. The Celestial Corporation facility, once a harmonious symphony of innovation and ambition, had transformed into a discordant echo of its former self. The temporal distortions unleashed by the Time Eater were not just anomalies. They were tears in the very fabric of reality, each rip a portal to chaos. As the team delved deeper into their research, trying to understand and counteract the creature's influence, the effects of the Time Eater became increasingly personal. Remy Novak woke one morning to find his reflection aged by years, his once youthful vigor replaced with the weariness of premature age. The shock of seeing his life's vitality eroded overnight left him grappling with a profound sense of loss. In the lab, the atmosphere was tense, the air filled with the unspoken fear of what each day might bring. Ava Pierce, attempting to maintain a semblance of normalcy, focused on the data, her voice steady as she coordinated their efforts. "We need to map the distortions, identify any patterns. There has to be a way to predict where it will strike next." Gideon Voss, standing beside her, nodded. "Agreed. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We started this. We have to finish it." The banter that once lightened their heavy workload had all but vanished, replaced by brief exchanges laden with the weight of their predicament. Yet in a moment of levity, Dex Arlo tried to break the mounting tension. "Anyone else think we should have just stuck to making time travel movies? Seems a lot safer." His comment elicited a few strained smiles, a brief respite from the oppressive atmosphere. But the levity was short-lived. Thane Krios, returning from a patrol of the facility's perimeter, reported more unsettling news. "The security feeds are glitching. I saw things. People who shouldn't be there. Shadows of the past, or maybe the future." Zara Finch, who had been studying the biological effects of the temporal distortions, added with a hint of dread in her voice, "It's not just the security feeds. The flora in the greenhouse. They're evolving, regressing. Time is unraveling at the seams." Soren Vega, the intern whose enthusiasm had been a beacon of light, now looked visibly shaken. "So what? We're stuck in a horror movie with no way out?" Gideon, ever the pillar of strength, placed a reassuring hand on Soren's shoulder. "No, we find a solution. We always do." His confidence was admirable, but even he couldn't mask the uncertainty that flickered in his eyes. As they gathered around the central table, poring over the data, a sense of camaraderie emerged, a collective determination to face the unknown. They were a team, bound by a shared goal, even as the world around them threatened to collapse. Ava, looking around at her colleagues, her friends, felt a surge of pride. "We're going to beat this," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "We have to." The days blended into one another, each marked by new challenges and discoveries. The facility, once a beacon of human achievement, had become a labyrinth of temporal anomalies, each corridor, each room a potential trap. Yet, amidst the chaos, the team persevered, their resolve unbroken. They were scientists, explorers of the unknown, and though they had unwittingly unleashed a force beyond their understanding, they faced it with courage. As the Celestial Corporation facility continued to suffer under the Time Eater's relentless assault, the once cohesive team found themselves fraying at the edges, their mental states as volatile as the temporal anomalies they were battling. One morning, as the team congregated in the makeshift command center they had established in the main lab, Ava Pierce tried to cut through the thick tension with a semblance of normalcy. "Let's review the overnight data. Maybe we missed something that could give us an edge." Gideon Voss, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights, gave a curt nod. "Proceed. We need every advantage we can get." As Ava presented, Remy Novak interjected, his voice tinged with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. "What if we're looking at this the wrong way? What if we can't beat this thing?" Dex Arlo, who had been silently monitoring the communication channels, turned to face the group. "I'm all for thinking outside the box, but unless you're suggesting we negotiate with a time-eating monster, I'm not sure where you're going with this." Remy's frustrated sigh was a sound they had all become too familiar with. "I don't know, Dex. Maybe I'm just tired of watching everything we've worked for slip through our fingers." It was Zara Finch who broke the cycle of despair with a determined look. "We can't afford to lose hope. Every piece of data is a piece of the puzzle. We just need to find out how they fit together." Thane Krios, who had been standing sentinel at the doorway, his gaze ever watchful, spoke up for the first time since the meeting began. "Hope is a luxury we might not be able to afford. We need results." Soren Vega, the youngest among them, and the most visibly shaken by their descent into chaos, tried to inject a lighter note. "Well, at least this beats my last internship. All I had to worry about there was making coffee." The attempt at humor was met with a mix of weary smiles and resigned chuckles. It was a brief moment of respite in an otherwise dire situation. Their focus was abruptly pulled back to the crisis at hand, when Ava's console beeped loudly, signaling an anomaly detection. "We've got something, Sector 3. It's different this time." Gideon straightened, a spark of interest in his eyes. "Different how?" Ava's fingers flew over the controls, bringing up the data on the main screen. "It's not just a temporal distortion. There's physical displacement. Something, or someone, has been moved." The team exchanged uneasy glances. Physical displacement was a new development, one that hinted at the Time Eater's growing power. As they debated their next move, the facility shuddered, a low rumble that felt like the growl of some great beast. Lights flickered, and for a moment the command center was plunged into darkness. When the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the room in a harsh red glow, Thane was already moving towards the door. "I'll check it out. Stay here." Gideon was quick to follow, his sense of responsibility overriding his caution. "I'm coming with you. The rest of you, monitor the situation. We'll be in comms range." As they left, Zara turned to the remaining team members, her voice firm despite the uncertainty that clouded her features. "Let's get back to work. We're not beaten yet." The command center, usually a hub of activity and innovation, had become a bunker, a place of refuge against an unseen enemy that stalked them through the very fabric of time. As Ava, Remy, Dex, and Soren bent over their consoles, each was acutely aware of the thin thread that held them to their sanity. In the bowels of the Celestial Corporation facility, Gideon Voss and Thane Krios moved with purpose through the dimly lit corridors, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like beacons. The anomaly detected in Sector 3 had drawn them deeper into the facility than they had ventured since the crisis began. As they approached the sector, the air grew colder, the very atmosphere charged with an unseen menace. "Feels like we're walking into the belly of the beast," Thane muttered, his voice low, a hand resting on the sidearm at his belt. Gideon, his mind racing with possibilities, responded with a grim determination. "Then let's make sure we're not digested." Their attempt at levity did little to dispel the tension, but it was a welcome distraction from the unease that gnawed at their insides. The sector's entrance loomed before them, a massive door sealed shut. Gideon approached the control panel, entering a series of commands. The door remained unmoved, its mechanisms unresponsive. Thane, ever the pragmatist, stepped forward, examining the door's edges. "We might have to force it." With a nod from Gideon, Thane set to work, employing a compact breaching device designed for emergency situations. The device whirred to life, its high-pitched whine echoing through the corridors as it cut through the door's locking mechanism. As the door finally gave way, they were met with a sight that defied explanation. The sector, once a hub of scientific research, had transformed into a twisted landscape of temporal disarray. Equipment and furniture were suspended in midair, caught in a moment of time that neither moved forward nor backward. Gideon stepped into the room, his flashlight sweeping across the chaos. "This is impossible." Thane, following close behind, kept his weapon ready, his senses on high alert. "In our line of work, I think we've redefined what impossible means." Their exploration led them deeper into the sector, where the effects of the Time Eater's presence became even more pronounced. Walls that should have been solid were translucent, revealing glimpses of the sector in different eras, some futuristic, others archaic. It was in this surreal landscape that they found the source of the anomaly. A rift in the very fabric of time, pulsating with energy, stood at the center of the room. Around it, the air shimmered, the boundary between past, present, and future blurred. Gideon, his scientific curiosity piqued despite the danger, approached the rift. "This must be where it's feeding, where it's strongest." Thane, his voice tense, cautioned, "And probably where it's most dangerous. We should call the others. Get Ava and Zara down here." Gideon nodded, reaching for his communicator. "You're right. This is bigger than we thought." As they prepared to retreat and regroup, a sudden movement caught their attention. From the shadows, figures emerged, echoes of the facility's staff from different times, their expressions twisted in confusion and fear. Gideon and Thane found themselves face to face with the consequences of their experiment, the human cost of their ambition. The figures reached out, their hands phasing through the air, trapped in a moment they could neither escape nor fully inhabit. The sight was a sobering reminder of their situation. Gideon, his voice heavy with the weight of their responsibility, spoke into the communicator. "We need everyone. Now." As they made their way back to the command center, the gravity of their discovery hung between them, a silent pact to do whatever it took to mend the tear they had created in the fabric of time. Back in the command center, the team gathered, their faces etched with concern and determination. Ava, Zara, Dex, Remy, and Soren listened intently as Gideon and Thane recounted their discovery. The revelation of the rift and its effects on the sector galvanized the team. Despite the overwhelming odds, they were united in their resolve to confront the Time Eater and repair the damage they had caused. As they strategized, the banter that had once characterized their interactions was replaced by a focused collaboration. The Celestial Corporation team, now fully assembled in the makeshift command center, huddled around the holographic display table that illuminated their determined faces with a soft blue light. The rift's discovery in Sector 3 had injected a new urgency into their mission. With the stakes higher than ever, they plotted their next move against the Time Eater. Ava Pierce, her eyes scanning the data streams flowing across the screen, broke the silence. If we can channel the rift's energy into a containment field, we might be able to trap the Time Eater, or at least force it to reveal itself. Gideon Voss, standing at the head of the table, nodded thoughtfully. It's risky. We'd be betting everything on a theory, but it might be our only shot. Dex Arlo leaned in, his expression serious yet tinged with his characteristic wit. Well, since betting against time-eating monsters wasn't covered in my job description, I guess we're all in. Zara Finch, her gaze fixed on the schematics displayed above the table, added, We'll need to modify the containment units, recalibrate them for temporal energy. It's uncharted territory, but theoretically possible. Soren Vega, the intern who had quickly become an integral part of the team, chimed in. Theoretically possible? So was our chance of surviving this long. Let's do it. Thane Krios, ever the guardian of the group, spoke up from the back. While you work on the tech, I'll secure the perimeter. We can't afford any surprises. Remy Novak, surrounded by tools and parts already busy at work, grunted in agreement. Just make sure that thing doesn't decide to snack on us while we're setting the trap. The team set to work, their individual talents converging on a singular goal. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of apprehension and determination, each member acutely aware of the time ticking away. As Ava and Zara worked on recalibrating the containment units, their technical banter served as a backdrop to the intense concentration filling the room. Make sure the flux modulators are in phase, Ava instructed, her hands moving deftly over the components. Zara, double-checking the settings, replied, I've matched them to the temporal signature we recorded. It's as close as we're going to get without inviting our friend in for a direct measurement. Nearby, Dex and Soren were rigging the communication system to broadcast a lure, a complex algorithm designed to mimic the temporal energy patterns the Time Eater seemed drawn to. Think of it as the world's most complicated dinner bell, Dex joked, his humor a thin veil over the tension they all felt. Soren, despite the gravity of their situation, couldn't help but smile. Let's just hope it prefers takeout and doesn't decide to dine in. Meanwhile, Gideon oversaw the operation, his mind racing with contingencies and fallback plans. The weight of their mission, the lives it touched, and the potential it had to change the course of history, bore down on him with an intensity that would have crushed a lesser man. As the trap was set, the team gathered once more, their faces reflecting the gravity of what was to come. Gideon looked around at each of them, his heart swelling with pride. No matter what happens, know that I couldn't have asked for a better team. The moment of unity was shattered by the activation of the trap. Energy surged through the containment units, lighting up the sector with an ethereal glow. The rift responded, its pulsating energy intensifying as if in challenge. The team watched, breaths held as the trap reached its crescendo. The air vibrated with power, the boundary between their world and the Time Eater's realm thinning to a mere whisper. And then silence. The trap had been sprung, the bait set. Now all they could do was wait, their fate in the hands of the very creature they sought to ensnare. The tension in the air was palpable as the Celestial Corporation team watched the energy readings from the containment field spike, then stabilize. The trap was set, the silence in the aftermath almost as deafening as the energy surge had been. They were in uncharted territory now, waiting for a sign that their plan to ensnare the Time Eater would succeed. Ava Pierce, her eyes glued to the monitors, broke the silence with a cautious optimism. The field's holding steady. If this works, we might just... Her words were cut short by an unexpected fluctuation on the screen. The energy levels within the containment field began to oscillate wildly, a clear indication that something was amiss. Gideon Voss, always the voice of calm in the storm, attempted to rally the team. Stay focused. We knew this wouldn't be straightforward. We can... It was then that Remy Novak, the engineer who had spent countless hours poring over the machinery that now powered their last hope, stepped away from his console, his expression one of tormented indecision. There's something I need to do, he muttered almost to himself. Dex Arlo, ever observant, caught the change in Remy's demeanor. Remy? What's going on, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. Zara Finch, too, noticed the shift, her scientific curiosity piqued by the engineer's sudden strange behavior. Remy, if there's a problem with the equipment, we need to know now. But Remy's gaze was distant, his mind seemingly made up. It's not the equipment, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. It's me. Before anyone could react, Remy activated a hidden override on his console, one he had installed without the knowledge of the rest of the team. The containment field's energy levels began to drop rapidly, the intricate balance they had achieved unraveling in seconds. Gideon, his voice rising in alarm, demanded, "Remy, what have you done?" Thane Krios, always ready for action, moved to intercept Remy, but the engineer was quick, dodging past him with a desperation born of madness. "I can fix this. I can make a deal with it." Soren Vega, the intern whose experience had been nothing short of a trial by fire, could only watch in horror. A deal? With that thing? Is he insane? Ava, her hands flying over her own console in an attempt to counteract Remy's sabotage, shot back, "Right now, sanity's a luxury we can't afford. Help me fix this." Dex, though, tried to reach out to Remy, calling out to the engineer as he headed towards the rift. "Remy, man, think about what you're doing. This isn't you." But it was too late. Remy's actions had weakened the containment field enough for the Time Eater to sense the vulnerability. With a surge of power that sent shockwaves through the facility, the entity made its move, a dark maw appearing within the rift, reaching out for the source of the disturbance. The team could only watch in horror as Remy, his figure silhouetted against the growing darkness, was consumed by the Time Eater. The entity's form became more defined, feeding on the energy Remy had unleashed, growing stronger with every passing second. In the aftermath, the silence was heavier than before, the team's shock at Remy's betrayal palpable. Gideon, his jaw clenched, finally spoke, his voice heavy with grief and resolve. "We can't let his sacrifice be in vain. We regroup now." Zara, her eyes wet with unshed tears, nodded. "He thought he was saving us. We owe it to him to finish this." In the wake of Remy Novak's tragic betrayal and the Time Eater's subsequent empowerment, the Celestial Corporation team regrouped, their resolve hardened by the loss of their friend and the escalating threat. The containment field's collapse had not only failed to trap the entity, but it also fed its insatiable hunger for temporal energy, making it stronger than ever. Gideon Voss, standing before the team in the command center, outlined their desperate plan. "We have one last shot at this. We need to use the experimental time device. It's a long shot, but it might just give us the edge we need." Ava Pierce, her eyes weary but determined, nodded in agreement. The device was designed for controlled time manipulation. If we can't trap the Time Eater, maybe we can disrupt its feeding pattern, make it vulnerable. Dex Arlo, trying to lighten the mood despite the gravity of their situation, quipped, "At this point, I'd be willing to try interpretive dance if you told me it would help." His attempt at humor was met with faint smiles, a brief moment of levity in an otherwise tense atmosphere. Zara Finch, always focused on the scientific aspect, added, "We'll need to recalibrate the device for maximum effect. It's designed for precision, not power." Soren Vega, the intern whose growth had been accelerated by their extraordinary circumstances, stepped forward. "Let me help with that. I've got a good grasp on the device's mechanics by now." Thane Krios, who had been quietly surveying the room, finally spoke. "While you work on the device, I'll prepare our defenses. If this goes sideways, we'll need to hold off the Time Eater long enough to make it work." Gideon nodded, appreciating Thane's pragmatism. "Let's get to work then. Time is one thing we don't have." As the team dispersed to their respective tasks, the air was filled with a frenetic energy. Ava and Zara, along with Soren, huddled around the time device, their hands and minds working in unison to modify it for their needs. Dex, meanwhile, set up communications links to monitor the Time Eater's movements, providing real-time updates to Thane, who was fortifying their position within the facility. The hours passed in a blur of activity, each team member driven by a mix of fear, determination, and the unspoken bond that had formed between them in the face of their shared ordeal. Finally, with the device recalibrated and their defenses as prepared as they could manage, Gideon called the team together. "It's time. If we're going to do this, we need to do it now." As they made their way to the designated activation point, the facility seemed to pulse with an ominous energy, as if aware of the impending confrontation. Thane, checking his weapons one last time, offered a grim smile. "Never thought I'd be fighting a battle against time itself." Dex, adjusting the settings on a handheld monitor, replied, "Yeah, well, I always knew I'd make history. Just didn't think it would be quite like this." Ava, carrying the modified time device, glanced around at her team, her friends. "No matter what happens, I want you all to know. It's been an honor." The sentiment was echoed in the determined nods and tight smiles of her companions. They had come too far to back down now. As they activated the device, the air around them shimmered, reality bending under the strain of the temporal energy being unleashed. The Time Eater, sensing the threat, emerged from the rift, its form more defined and menacing than ever. The team stood ready, their fate now intertwined with the very fabric of time itself. They had prepared for this moment, understanding the risks, but driven by the slim hope of victory. The battle that followed was unlike any they had imagined, a clash of wills and technology against an entity that defied the laws of nature. They fought with everything they had, their efforts amplified by the time device's disruptive influence on the Time Eater. In the end, as the dust settled and the echoes of their confrontation faded, the outcome was uncertain. The Time Eater had been forced back, its advance halted, but at a cost that was yet to be fully realized. In the aftermath of their desperate gambit against the Time Eater, the corridors of the Celestial Corporation facility were eerily silent, a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned just hours before. The team, battered and bruised both physically and emotionally, gathered in what remained of the command center, the weight of their actions and their losses, hanging heavily in the air. Gideon Voss, his face a mask of exhaustion and resolve, surveyed his team. "We did it. We pushed it back. But the rift, it's still there. We've bought ourselves time, but this is far from over." Ava Pierce, her gaze fixed on the monitors still flickering with data, nodded in agreement. "The device worked, but it's not a permanent solution. The Time Eater is still out there, and as long as the rift remains, it will try to break through again." Dex Arlo, attempting to inject a note of levity into the grim proceedings, quipped, "So what you're saying is we're on monster duty indefinitely. Guess I'll cancel my vacation plans." His joke was met with tired smiles, a brief flicker of amusement in the face of their ongoing ordeal. Zara Finch, ever the scientist, was already focused on the future. "We need to study the rift, understand it better. Maybe there's a way to close it for good." Soren Vega, who had grown more in these past days than in all his previous years, spoke up, his voice steady despite the uncertainty. "And what if we can't? What if this is our new normal?" Thane Krios, checking his equipment, responded with a pragmatism born of years in the field. "Then we keep fighting. We've faced the impossible, and we're still standing. We'll be ready for whatever comes next." The team's resolve, forged in the heat of battle, was unbreakable. They had faced the Time Eater and survived, but the victory was bittersweet. The rift, a constant reminder of their hubris and the danger it posed, loomed over them, a challenge for another day. As they began the arduous process of rebuilding and preparation, Ava found herself looking back at the moment before the experiment that had started it all. The irony of their situation was not lost on her. They had sought to master time, only to become its servants, caught in an endless cycle of conflict with an entity beyond their understanding. Yet in the face of this existential threat, the team found strength in each other. Their camaraderie, tested by adversity, had become their most potent weapon. Dex, noticing Ava's reflective mood, nudged her gently. "Hey, no matter what the future holds, we've got this. We're time warriors now, right?" Ava smiled, the weight of her thoughts momentarily lifted. "Time warriors. I like the sound of that." Gideon, standing before the remnants of his team, felt a surge of pride. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We'll find a way to close the rift, to stop the Time Eater for good. Together. The team, united by a common purpose, faced the uncertain future with a determination that was unyielding. They were the guardians of the rift, the only line of defense against the Time Eater's return.